I'd like to welcome everybody. Sharon, are you taping this now?
I just put it on. It is December 2nd, and this is our first Friendly Fire, and it's with Mike Essen, who's a radio show host, and Rabbi Barry Silver, and this evening is going to be about Israel, President Obama, and I'm not sure what else.
We'll figure it out.
Go ahead.
It's a pleasure to be here for the first installment of Friendly Fire. Mike and I were trying to figure out what to call this, and there was a great name before, Crossfire, where they had a liberal and a conservative on together, but that name had already been taken. And I didn't want to use Crossfire because I'm Jewish, so I'm not into crosses. And also, we're not going to get cross with each other. We're going to be friendly. We will disagree, though. There are some people that think if you're disagreeing, that means by definition, you must be unfriendly or mad at each other. But we will definitely disagree, but we will do so agreeably. And if you hear us taking issue with each other, don't get alarmed. Don't get scared. Don't worry. We're still very friendly because this is Friendly Fire. And the best part of all is that everyone here, everyone with us on this Zoom will be able to participate and share your point of view. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a particular topic. And before we move off of that topic, we'll let other people jump in and you can try to straighten us out and tell us where we went wrong. Now, because this is a Zoom call, you have to make sure that you silence yourself if you're going to be making noise in the background. Otherwise, everybody will hear it and it kind of messes things up. So you put yourself on mute, and then when you're ready to speak, go right ahead. So we're going to talk about a few different topics, but the first topic that I wanted to discuss with Mike, first I want to welcome him to the show. Mike's been to Va-Dor before, and this is a part of Congregation Va-Dor, which takes an inspirational view towards Judaism and towards faith. And we're welcoming Mike back to our show. He actually did some discussions and debates with us before, and he's still coming back for more. So that's a very good sign. So I wanted to talk with Mike about Israel and also about some of the about President Obama's memoirs that he just came out with. And Mike, why don't you start the ball rolling? Would you like to speak about Israel? What's going on in Israel today? What's going on with President Obama's memoirs, or maybe some of President-elect Biden's cabinet picks? Go right ahead. Start the ball rolling. It's all yours.
Sure. President Obama has a very, to say unfriendly would be the understatement of the millennial reign, relationship with Israel. He gave money to Fatah. He invited Muslim Brotherhood to sit in the front seat of the DNC. And now he is using anti-Israeli, quote / anti-Zionist quotes in his book. I don't have the book, I forget the quotes because they're so unmemorable and so unimpressive, but it's been throughout his career. He's been like that. He's even often wanted to cut aid to Israel. People who criticize Israel does not mean you're anti-Semitic. If you question Israel and side with the Arabs, remember he would use the term radical Islam, or even called ISIS a JV team, you are anti-Semitic then. So there's absolutely no surprise of mine, Barry.
Okay. Let me start off this episode by indicating the fact that this is a discussion between two opposing points of view, but we don't always oppose each other. Sometimes we will be in agreement. There's some talk shows where they intentionally take an antagonistic point of view to each other to make it a better show. We don't do that. There are some points where I will agree and some disagree. I do not toe the party line for the Democratic Party, nor for the liberal left. I agree with the Democratic Party on many issues. I agree with President Obama on many issues, and many others I don't. So this is going to be an independent discussion, but my views do tend to be more often than not on the liberal side, and Mike's views will more often than not be on the conservative side. With that being said, let me just speak a little bit about President Obama. First of all, I think he was a truly remarkable president. I think he came into a situation where the economy was bad and the country was not doing too well, and he was a stabilizing force. And I think overall he did a good job, and he was honest, he was caring, he was extremely intelligent, charismatic. And what I liked perhaps best about him, he was a really, really good basketball player and really understood, you can tell a lot about how somebody plays sports about their personality. He was a good player, a good competitor, but he didn't go too far, and he was able to have a good attitude. So he competed in politics, but he had a good attitude towards others, and he got along with people of all different stripes. However, I tend to agree with Mike. I do not believe that President Obama had a very positive view towards Israel, especially based on his memoirs. In his memoirs, he discusses Israel, and he says things like Israel was fighting and expanding and waging wars against her neighbors. And this is completely unfounded and a complete misrepresentation about what was going on. Israel was only defending herself, and Israel consistently made overtures for peace. Israel, when it was founded, wrote a charter in which they reached out to their Arab neighbors and said, let us build together a paradise in the Middle East where we can all get along together. And instead they were greeted with Arab armies saying, we're going to finish off what Hitler did, and we're going to drive you into the sea, and we're going to annihilate you. And in fact, we're happy that you're in one place. So this is the background of Israel. You have one group, Israel, which was trying to survive and make peace after having a third of the Jewish population wiped out in the Holocaust, and another group that actually had aligned with Hitler in many instances and was trying to destroy the Jewish people, and did so consistently ever since. And the Palestinians, when they had democracy, voted for a terrorist group, Hamas. When Israel gave back land for peace and said, here, take these greenhouses and make a good economy for yourselves, they converted them into places where they launched terrorist attacks from and destroyed the greenhouses and destroyed any chance of peace. So I believe that if President Obama is writing and indicating that Israel was launching wars and Israel was waging war, and it's a complete misrepresentation. It's unfair. Where does he get this idea from? He was under the tutelage of Pastor Wright, and Pastor Wright was all wrong. He was anti-Semitic, anti-white, he was a racist, and President Obama never bothered calling him out on that. And when he was asked about it, said, oh, I didn't realize he was saying these things. It's obvious that President Obama is an incredibly good politician. And so in Chicago, if you want to be a good politician, you joined his church, you went along with what he was saying, and you didn't take issue with it. However, let me also say this. The people on the right wing, have done a horrible, terrible thing to President Obama. As I said, I think overall he was a very good president. And even when it came to Israel, his policies, I'm not talking about his belief system, his policies were very pro-Israel. He built up the Iron Dome. He worked with Israel to establish security and defense. And in his public statements, his statements were very supportive of Israel. For the right wing to vilify him and say he was an enemy of Israel, he was horrible for Israel, it's just a lie. And I think it has racist overtones. I think that people went after him and were over the top because they hated to see a Black person as president. Not everybody, not everyone who's anti-Obama was racist. However, that fueled the fire for some people to go after him. President Obama was good to Israel, and many Republicans were not. Many Republicans were horrible to Israel, and many Republicans like President Nixon was openly, not openly, but he's secretly anti-Semitic. When we found the recordings of him, he was saying anti-Semitic racist things about Jews. You'll never hear a Republican say that, because for the Republicans, every Democrat is anti-Israel and every Republican is pro. And the Bushes also, President Bush, both of them also said if Israel doesn't accede to US demands, they would cut off aid. The Republicans threatened Israel with cutting off aid. And Nixon, according to books that I've read and secret information which has now been made public, knew about the Yom Kippur War and didn't warn Israel. And when Israel finally recovered and could have annihilated the Egyptian army, Nixon and Kissinger pulled in the reins and told them they had to pull back. So as far as Israel's concerned, I think Obama's somewhere in the middle, but overall his policies were pro-Israel. His memoirs are disturbing and troubling, and I think all Democrats should call him out on that. And I think more importantly, because Obama's not the president anymore, the Democrats need to do a much better job of reining in the squad, castigating them, challenging them, rebuking them. And the Democrats should make it loud and clear to the whole world. Anyone who appreciates and believes in civil rights should be a supporter of Israel. The only place in the Middle East where you find civil rights, the only place where women are treated equally, the only place where you have religious freedom with Baha'i, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all given equal rights, the only place that you can criticize the government and live to talk about it. The Democrats should champion Israel as a bastion of freedom and civil rights. And instead, they've been lukewarm at best. And so I hope that there will be a change of heart in the Democratic Party, but more than just hope, I hope everyone on this Zoom call and everyone listening on the internet will tell everyone else that we all should be champions of Israel. And the more liberal we are, the more we believe in the Democratic Party, the more strongly we should support Israel. Mike, I'll give you a chance to share a few words and then let's open it up.
I don't think that the backlash of Obama was, for my part, it certainly had nothing to do with race. Like, I have championed Alan West and many others for supporting Israel. Barry, you're right about something.
That's good to know. I appreciate that I'm right about something.
Pat Buchanan, Bob Novak, there was a slew of writers who were very anti-Semitic and it used to bother me when I was even a young conservative. I mean, you remember Bob Novak and Pat Buchanan, and Israel was always wrong to them. They wanted to cut aid every time they talked about it. Nixon, I'm not a huge fan of myself, and I'm not going to. I will repudiate the fact that he made sickening anti-Semitic comments on his tape. I never was a fan of his. We have a president right now in office who's demonstrated the Abraham Accords, which is almost impossible. He has had Israel's. He declared them as the Golan Heights Israeli territory. And Donald Trump is the best friend of Israel since Harry Truman in 1948, actually. And I think that's actually true. President Obama, I think was a horrible president. The only worst president of my lifetime, and I was born in 71, was Jimmy Carter. I think Jimmy Carter was an absolute mess in every respect. Who is a Hamas supporter, by the way. Wasn't in office, but he is now. Barack Obama, the economic only dug himself out of his own messes with the stimulus package, the $34 trillion spending he did, the way he tried to control everybody's temperature through swine oil, the way spending money on that instead of spending money against ISIS and enemies, or even and wrecking our whole healthcare system with this Marxist Obamacare. He was technically an economic fascist with Marxist tendencies. That's my statement.
Mike, I appreciate your being or attempting to be even-handed on this, but let's set the record straight. First of all, President Carter. I do not care for what President Carter did after he was president. He took money from Arab oligarchs and he became anti-Israel, and it's a disgrace. However, while he was in office, he did something incredible.
I agree. I'll give you that. Sorry.
Okay, he brought the parties together, a great personal effort, and established peace with Egypt, and that was an incredible thing that he did.
The only good thing.
Okay, good. Now I'm glad we're on the same wavelength there. Now let's talk about President Trump. Okay, President Trump did things that were very good for Israel. Moved the embassy, recognized the Golan. I think most importantly of all, cut off funding to the Palestinian Authority that were using funds are derived from America and paying off the families of suicide bombers to reward them for killing Israelis. That was a despicable thing. And actually, Israel was actually contributing to the Palestinian Authority also, because they were so desperate for peace. So you can't really castigate America for doing it, because Israel was doing the same thing. But when Trump cut it off, that was a good thing. I'll give that to him. But here's where I think Trump was an utter disaster for Israel. First of all, everything he touches is tainted. Half of his cabinet is in jail or was convicted of crimes. Anything that, if Trump is your friend, then you're already suspect, and it's a dark stain on you. Secondly, Trump abandoned the ally of Israel, the Kurds. The Kurds fought with the United States to wipe out ISIS, and they're the ones who really did a lot of the grunt work and suffered a lot of casualties. President Trump did something unconscionable. Even all the other things he did for Israel pales in comparison to having people that fought with us in the trenches against ISIS. And then when Turkey said, we're going to come through their territory, Trump says, yeah, go for it, because he has financial interest in some towers in Turkey and allowed them to go in and commit genocide against some of the Kurds. That's outrageous. And it trumps all the other things that he might have done. Plus, the Kurds are an ally of Israel. So why would anybody now fight as an ally of Israel and hope that the United States was going to protect them when he did that? And perhaps the worst thing of all, if that's not bad enough, Israel has acknowledged that climate change is as grave a threat to Israel as the Arabs, because as the Mediterranean rises, it'll bury Tel Aviv under the sea, which the Arabs threaten to do. We're going to put you under the sea. Tel Aviv could be under the sea. And so Israel recognizes the fact, because they have really smart scientists, that climate change is a grave threat. And also there's a severe water shortage, and climate change is going to make it worse. So President Trump did something that is absolutely disgraceful. He denies climate change. Dayenu, that should be enough for any self-respecting person to have nothing to do with the guy, but he denies climate change, which is the gravest threat towards Israel. Not only does he deny it, he says, burn, baby, burn, and he's fiddling while our forests burn and trying to promote more fossil fuels. That is not only irrational and disgraceful, it's a grave threat to Israel. So yes, he did some things for Israel, but I think the things that he did to harm Israel are far, far worse. I would love to hear from other people now. So Sharon, maybe you can unmute people and open it up for comments from those who are listening in. Who would like to share in this discussion?
Fran? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fran?
No, that's not you.
Fran, if you can hear, unmute yourself and join the conversation.
Mute,
All right.
okay.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Fran.
okay, no, I'm going back to the Obama. I loved Obama, and I'm in the middle of his book. Actually, not really the middle. I started it, but just to, from what you said, I just wanted to tell you, I received something from JNS organization, Opinion Obama, and I did receive something before getting into it. His telling of Israel's story, just as you said, at the beginning of chapter 25, not only exhibits a flawed understanding of the region, which clearly impacted his politics as president, but misleads readers in a way that will forever shape their negative perspective of the Jewish state. And I just want to say that you explained it all in your, when you spoke before.
Thank you, Fran. And I think it's really important. You say it'll forever stain the opinion of people. It will, unless we do something about it, unless we speak up and tell the truth. And the truth is that Obama is not a villain, but I think he was raised in a milieu where they didn't really understand Israel very well and had a negative view towards Israel. And therefore, it's up to all of us to correct the record and not just say, well, I'm a Democrat, so I'm not going to criticize Obama because he's a Democrat. That is wrong. And the biggest threat to our political parties and to our country is people in both parties refusing to criticize their own party, because there's plenty to criticize on both parties. So we need to speak up and challenge things that we think are wrong. Anybody else want to share some thoughts about this topic?
Hey, Rabbi, this is Joe.
Yes. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, a couple things. One, if you're going back to Obama, remember when the Hamas was firing thousands of rockets from Gaza into Israel? Remember that?
Yes.
And okay, if you can see me, well, anyway. Anyway, I don't know if you can see me or not, but it doesn't matter. The point is, what I'm saying is that Obama curtailed, did a no-fly zone in that area and did not supply Israel with anything. or tried to prevent Israel from getting twice at that time. Really was the backstabbing to Israel at the time. But put that aside. The other stuff you were saying, as far as the Republicans, a lot of Republicans were anti-Semitic, and a lot of Democrats are too. And we need to stop that and to unite a little bit better.
Thank you so much. Mike acknowledged that there were Republicans on the far right that were anti-Semitic. And by the way, when I said that some of the anti-Obama feeling was fueled by racism, President Trump challenged his birth and said that he wasn't born in the United States. Would he have said that about a president who was white? I don't think so. And President Trump.
I don't bring up the birth movement. I never did. I have a friend named Dan Ray that used to do that, and I was kind of way against it because that's not the issue. The issue is one thing, but don't get personal. Because as a former candidate for Congress and a former candidate for sheriff, I know how it feels to be personally attacked and family and friends. So I don't go in that direction.
Well, I know you don't, but the problem is that other people do. And President Trump went after Obama, say with the birther movement, and also said that 5 teenagers should be executed for murder when they were innocent. He took out an ad in the newspaper and said that they should be executed. That's racism.
I'm a former New Yorker, and he did what almost everyone else has done in that thing. I had a friend growing up who was accused of raping someone. I worked at a store, and it turned out to be somebody that was looked exactly like him. In fact, that's how I met F. Bailey. But the thing is, people make mistakes all the time. It's owning up to these mistakes that makes you a better person.
Well, that we know will never happen. Trump never acknowledges a mistake, but you say everyone's done it. I don't think everyone's taken out an ad in the New York Times in a case that they knew nothing about and demanded the execution of 5 Black teenagers. Maybe in your circles, people do that. To me, everyone does not do that.
But I'm going to tell you, WINS and everyone else went after my friend, accused him of everything under the sun, and turned out they were wrong. And that's back in the 60s. So this is happening consistently, not just Trump, but everyone from the media. They're jumping on guns. They're saying things. They did that with the lacrosse thing, and they did it with Jewel in Atlanta. And they're probably, based on the evidence right now, going to end up taking this stuff back on Biden and Trump in this election.
Joe, I'm going to disagree with you. Joe, I'm going to disagree with you. Not everyone does this. Not everyone takes out full-page ads in the newspaper accusing people of murder that they don't know anything about. Anybody else want to comment?
Not just what we can.
Anyone else?
I haven't heard the story, Barry. I will check it out about that. But Donald Trump got the Ellis Island Award from Jesse Jackson. He shelved Jennifer Hudson for 12 months in his apartments, and he got awards from Muhammad Ali as well. If he was so racist, I don't think that would have happened. I didn't support the birther movement either, but I don't think necessarily it's tied to racism. We can't prove it either way. It's kind of a yes, he is, no, he is the kind of situation. I'm not saying Trump is a perfect human being. He's far from it, or Jesus Christ or anything like that. I'm Jewish, so I don't believe he's divine. But I don't see the racism myself.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Pat. Go ahead.
I hope I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to go back to Obama and Biden's relationship, if I can, for a minute.
Sure.
I'll go back to, but bring it up. Since Biden was such a close confidant of Obama's, and they were really close, I'm a little worried that he might feel just like Obama feels about Israel. And I got a very disturbing forwarded message to me from my friend Fran, who's on tonight. I invited her, even though she lives in Toronto. She's the Fran that spoke up earlier, from the ZOA, talking about all the awful things about many of his appointees, and they're anti-Israel, positions. And so this is worrying me a lot.
Pat, I appreciate your inviting Fran, because now we've become international. So this
That's
is
right.
great.
That's
We have
right.
taken this, we are now an international show. This is wonderful in our first episode. So thank you very much for
Okay.
appearing and for inviting others. We appreciate that.
Okay.
You have to be very, very, very careful about what you read on the internet, especially political stuff. It is totally skewed so often. And the ZOA, sadly, has become completely partisan. They are partisan hacks. And it's sad for me to say it. My father was also a rabbi, and he was one of the leaders of the ZOA. He was a liberal reform rabbi who was so pro-Israel that he became a leader of the ZOA, their chaplain. And he loved the ZOA. And so I had a discussion with the ZOA, and they were so rabidly anti-democratic, you couldn't get a sane word out of them, including the leader of the ZOA. There wasn't one word that they could possibly think of that was positive about the Democrats. They hated everything about Democrats and loved everything about Republicans. You could not get them to say one word against President Trump or one positive thing about President Obama. And it's sad to see an organization that's devoted to Israel sell its soul to the devil and now become nothing more than a hack, because that harms Israel. What we need, what Israel needs, is for everyone to join together and place Israel above partisan politics and to bring Jews together and unite us around Israel. What the ZOA is saying is patently absurd. The Secretary of State who was nominated, Tony Blinken, his stepfather is a Holocaust survivor. He's a loyal, dedicated Jew. He loves Israel. To suggest that he's anti-Israel and to oppose him is doing a disservice to Israel. And we need to speak up and denounce that. And I look forward to the day when the ZOA will once again become a friend of Israel and not just an arm of the Republican Party. That would be a very good thing. Anybody else?
I feel better. Thank you.
I feel better too.
Good, I feel better too.
Credit for something, and I don't hear this from any other Democrat. You condemn the squad, and I don't. And they're very well liked in the party as of now. And I think I'm glad you're calling him out for it. I don't know how active you are in the party. I know you're more active in progressive causes in the Democrat Party itself. But Rashida Tlaib said the Holocaust gave her a warm, fuzzy feeling. Ilhan Omar is tied with care and terrorists, and. And the sad thing is, Nancy Pelosi said she misspoke. What an idiot, or a liar, or one of the other. It's just, it sickens me.
She misspoke when? What are you referring to?
Nancy Pelosi said that Ilhan Omar misspoke when she was condemned, when she called Israel Jews had dual loyalty to Israel.
Yeah, well, you know, the Democratic Party has failed to respond appropriately to the squad. And the squad is anti-Israel, and it's shameful that the Democratic Party has not done more to denounce them. And better still, they should educate them, and they should tell them, if you believe in civil rights, Israel is the bastion of civil rights. Support Israel. But I think that they had to be kind of mute because they needed all the Democrats to pull together to defeat the worst president that we've ever seen. But now that Joe Biden is in, I hope that the Democratic Party will speak out loud and clear about them. I'm glad to see that they have no representation in the Biden cabinet and with President Biden's new leadership. I'm glad to see they have nothing to do with it, and I hope it'll stay that way. I happen to agree with them on climate change, and I agree with them on many other issues. But when it comes to Israel, they should be rebuked and they should be sidelined. Yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in on this before we go to the next topic?
Couple things. One, when did Joe Biden ever denounce Ilhan Omar or Tlaib or any part of the squad? He hasn't. He has never denounced Antifa or Black Lives Matter, both terrorist organizations who are anti-Semitic. In fact, BLM is a no-Marxist organization, and they confess to that. Those are the things that should worry every Jew because they're all anti-Semitic groups. And he has not once denounced that. Now, as for being president-elect until under the Constitution, until he is elected through the Electoral College, he's nothing but a projection. Under the Constitution of the United States, the news media cannot announce who's the next president. It just doesn't work. Right now, with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of votes have not been canceled out, and the fact that there have been a lot of questions, including ballots that we now have captured that came from Mexico to different states of voter fraud and stuff that's going on. And we have witnesses, we have documentation, affidavits, including some people from Dominion, including the computers from Dominion, what they raided in Germany, which has been confirmed, where several of our soldiers were killed in the process, including one of the people from CIA arrested for treason. We have stuff going in.
Joe, I have to stop you because other people need a chance to talk.
Who else wants to speak?
Harris had his hand raised. Harris, you're up next.
Wait till it goes through
Joe,
the
you're
process,
done.
including
Harris.
the
Harris,
Supreme
go
Court.
ahead.
I just want to say one thing. As far as Israel is concerned, I am disappointed they never acknowledged the Armenian Holocaust at no time. And I think that's a failure on their part.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that was for political reasons. They should have acknowledged it. That actually gave the green light to Hitler. Hitler relied on the Armenian Holocaust to get the impression that you could actually wipe out a people and you would not be criticized by the world community.
Right.
I wasn't going to get into this, but I just feel the need to set the record straight. If someone's going to espouse nonsensical, irrational theories about the election and who won and who didn't win, President Trump has disgraced himself over his 4-year term, but perhaps none more than what he's doing right now in not recognizing the president-elect Biden. It is true theoretically that the Electoral College makes the determination, but there's never been a time when somebody won the election and then the Electoral College is just a perfunctory thing where they went to such extraordinary lengths and humiliated themselves to such an extent as President Trump. His own lawyers have quit and resigned because they didn't want to have anything to do with him. His own appointed judges have tossed his cases out left and right. He's encouraging people to use vigilante tactics. He's trying to strong arm people to disregard the view of the people. And even though there's a clear majority, he's trying to get the legislatures to overturn them. He's a threat to democracy. He doesn't believe in democracy. He believes in tyranny and dictatorships. And for anyone to endorse what he's doing and to give it even a shred of credibility is very sad, especially among the Jewish community. He should be held up to public ridicule because what he's doing is a threat to the United States of America. It's a threat to our democracy. Mike, what do you think about that topic?
No, I don't think, I think you're dead wrong, Barry. Arizona was called 10% in. Florida was called much later. Dead people have voted.
Oh,
People voted twice across the country. They're just trying to say what the people's votes count. If this election is fraudulent, it should be held to the courts.
Okay,
If there's fraud, I would say you're right. But there's been fraud for years. Alan West lost the seat for fraud. It should have been overturned. And you do remember Bush versus Gore, Barry, as well. And Al Franken won because Mickey Mouse voted for him. So it's
let me respond to that, Mike. You know what? You can make any accusation you want. The problem is that when they went to court, they didn't make the accusations anymore because they had no evidence. They're just saying nonsense and lies about dead people voting. It's all a scam and a sham, and I'm surprised, Mike. I'm really surprised that you would actually endorse this. There's no evidence. It's just bald-faced accusations and lies. It was
linked to Venezuela.
No. Yeah. They had a chance to present that in court, And they didn't even present it. And when they tried to make the allegation with no evidence and proof, it was laughed out of court. The attorneys are threatened with sanctions. They're threatened to lose their license because they're saying things that are reckless and irresponsible. There's absolutely no evidence to support what you're saying, just like there's no evidence when President Trump said that the coronavirus was a fraud and that it was a hoax of the Democrats. There was no evidence for it. When he says that climate change is a hoax, there's no evidence for it. And when he says that dead people are voting, there's no evidence for it. And you should not be repeating lies and nonsense for which there's absolutely no evidence. And so if there was any evidence at all, it would have been presented in court, but it wasn't. There's a place that you could bring these allegations, and when it came to court, they didn't, and their attorneys left. The only people he's left with are people who are buffoons, not even legitimate attorneys. His whole case is falling apart. I'm surprised that you wouldn't realize that.
You would call
Are you calling Rudy Giuliani and Dershowitz phonies?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
Are you
Not even phonies would be too polite.
Broadcasting. We had 10 hours yesterday of evidence and witnesses, affidavits, everything, forensics, the whole 9 yards. Same thing today. Right now, Rudy Giuliani is in Michigan, and they're allowing him to show it with evidence, and he could have been sworn in, but because he would have been sworn in, that made him a witness, not an attorney. But the thing is, it's being presented. If you watch
Why
it
don't you
and
let
not
somebody
listen to
else
doctors
speak?
and actually watch the evidence, you would see. All right, it's there, and it will be presented in the Supreme Court. There's 2 cases in there, and they're going to hear it.
I'm going to wrap up this conversation.
Joe,
I'm going to wrap this up. Let me just
Yeah,
explain
I'd like to
something.
say something.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I'm extremely upset with Trump's behavior in this matter and how he's been able to
He's
stay in the
fighting
White
for the
House
country.
with,
Sharon, can
excuse
you
me, I'd like to
moderate?
speak.
Go
It's
ahead, Sharon.
appalling to have a man with such disrespectful behavior stay in the White House. I feel he should have been handcuffed and thrown out after the first debate and what he's doing in the White House right now. We don't know the destruction, what he's doing in the White House and all the other stuff. How he got away with this getting way too far. And it's out of hand.
Thank you, Sherry. I just want to explain something to Joe. He says he's going to present evidence to the Supreme Court. I'm a lawyer and I can explain to you, it doesn't work that way. You don't present evidence to the Supreme Court. You have to present evidence in the trial court. That's where you present the evidence. The Supreme Court only reviews the proceedings below. They haven't presented evidence yet because it doesn't exist. Mike, I'm going to let you have the last word on this topic, and then we'll take on one more topic, and then we'll call it an end of our first episode. I think it's going very well, but I'd like to give you a chance to respond to that if you'd like.
Sure. The truth is, right now, a lot's up in the air when it comes to legal cases. He has a Clarence Darrow-like team of Rudy Giuliani, Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell, but I don't know if that's going to do it because you never know what a judge is going to say. But if Biden gets in office, we have somebody very much more dangerous than Kamala Harris, who ruined Brett Kavanaugh's life, who prosecuted people for smoking pot and did it herself, who's an out-and-out communist. And I just hope Biden wins. He doesn't go anywhere.
All right. Well, this has been a very entertaining first session. I'm glad that everybody joined with us. I just want to offer some concluding comments, and then I'll let Mike offer concluding comments and let anyone else share something if they'd like to. I just want to say that I am very, very grateful that we have someone in the White House now who respects science. Science is the greatest achievement of the human species. We've actually figured out how we got here. We figured out how the world got here. We figured out how to get to the moon. We figured out how to cure disease. Science is our greatest friend and a crowning achievement of the human species. And to have a president who makes a mockery of science, who takes people who are true scientists and gets rid of them, and who fires people for speaking the truth about science, and who says things that are so patently absurd about science, is disgraceful. But even worse, to have Jewish people Jewish people who champion science. We have the greatest scientists in the world. If you were to look at the Nobel Prizes for science, we have such an incredible representation among the scientists. To see Jewish people support someone who has no regard for science and who speaks the antithesis of science is a really horrible thing. I am glad to see that we have an administration that understands the truth about science and how it relates to the coronavirus, science and how it relates to climate change, and will use science for our benefit. I also hope, I sincerely hope, that we will get 2 Democrats elected in Georgia so that President Biden will be able to champion Jewish values of peace, which he can do through going to try to accomplish gun control and standing up to the NRA, Jewish values of women's rights, which he'll be able to do with a Democratic Congress by having abortion rights championed once again, Jewish values of helping the poor, helping the immigrant, and helping the planet. I look forward to a wonderful administration if we can get Democrats elected in Georgia. And I hope everyone will do everything they can, because President Biden has more Jewish people in his cabinet, actually in the White House, with a vice president who's married to a Jewish person, whose children are married to Jews, who will have grandchildren in the White House. There will be more Jewish representation than ever. And I think this could be a fantastic administration if we don't have Republicans blocking his way. And that's what I look forward to. Mike, I'll give you a chance to sum up. And I thank everyone for being with us.
I thank everyone for being with you too, and Barry, this opportunity I thank you for as well. We right now have a party, the Democrat Party, who has not condemned 2 Marxist hateful organizations, a so-called presidential candidate at this point, who called Antifa an idea. Ideas don't throw Molotov cocktails in people's faces and crush people. The Democrat Party right now is one of, and I'm not saying the Republicans are perfect, but please support Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue in Georgia. When you have a party that is advocating for free stuff, taking down statues, funding the police, banning Gone with the Wind and To Kill a Mockingbird, sounds like Cuba all over again. This is a very dangerous time for our country for the wrong reasons, Barry's saying. Go GOP, Trump 2020.
I will remind everybody, does anybody here speak French? Do you know what the word perdu means?
Lost.
It means, right, it means lost. So that's a pretty good indication of where he stands morally and ethically. I will agree with Mike. The Democratic Party needs to stand up against the racist and the anti-Semitic elements of Black Lives Matter, and also do a better job standing up to Antifa. I will agree with you there. Most people who align with Black Lives Matter don't do so for anti-Semitic or racist or anti-police reasons. Most people who are with Black Lives Matter do so unaware or perhaps unconcerned about their origins and about tendencies that are very scary and alarming. I agree with you, Mike. I share your concern about them. Most Democrats, I think, aren't aware of it. I know for a fact they're not joining with them because they're racist or anti-Semitic. They're just not aware of it or not sufficiently concerned. But I do agree with you. Democratic Party needs to stand up to these groups. And I really thank you, Mike, for allowing us to have an intelligent conversation with a Democrat and a Republican. You do not see this often. You do not see it enough. And we at Va-Dor encourage both sides to join together in friendly dialogue, friendly fire. And I encourage everyone here, call up your favorite person of another party, of an opposing party, and reach out and make friends and build bridges, because the United States needs to join together as one to tackle the serious problems that we have. And this show, Friendly Fire, is one way of doing it. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Hope to see you next week. We'll be here again at 7 o'clock with more exciting topics. Also, join with us on Shabbat. If you want a rational approach to Judaism with some really wonderful music, inspiring videos, and interesting conversations, join with us on Shabbat and our other activities. Thank you very much. And thank you, Sharon, for making this all possible.